brother and I all worked in the same area. And they're always like, which Heffley are you? To my sister Julie. And they're like, she's like, I'm not the mean one. She don't.
Nice.
I was the mean one. I was like, how did I get that name? I was like, I don't think I mean. She's like, what? Like, what? You're mean. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well, mean comes when you say no.
That's pretty much it.
So. You could say yes 100 times, but then you have to say no occasionally.
That sounds like my kids. I'm mean.
So what was the average temperature when you were in Hawaii?
Probably 85-ish or so, between 85 and.
Is it humid or is it very?
Yes, we've been dying since we've been back because everything's so dry. I actually had to go buy my daughter's humidifier for their room because they're like, I can't breathe. Sorry, honey. So I went and bought a humidifier. And of course, we have a puppy. And so we hadn't been around her in a while, so my oldest one was just having a heck of a time.
And cake.
100th anniversary, 120th anniversary cake. And just so you know, we have 20-year-old napkins celebrating the 100th anniversary.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
First cake. Cake and pizza.
Come to the work session, you get cake. There's a fair trade off.
We don't throw anything away.
Gerald. That where all his hair went was to you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Busy.
I had to chase Gerald this morning. He parked in the wrong spot.
Out at the airport.
Oh.
Locking the tent.
Mayor is supposed to be attending my, he had to go down to Anchorage today. He got bumped on a previous flight.
Oh, no.
John's not here. Maybe Mark's coming, I don't know. Or, Doug, I don't know. Doug coming? Doug will be here for the work session. I'm expecting Sig in person. That's a vegetarian.
I'm on diet, so I'm gonna have a
He's a vegetarian, got pepper.
Make you feel like you're eating.
Make you feel like you're still sticking to it.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh, your hair.
Yeah.
Like, can you see? Nope. And neither is Doug. They said.
good video, Matthew. Rita.
Oh.
Just shows you municipalities don't throw anything away.
Let me see. Dang. Aged quite well.
God knows where we have them stored.
Did you bring a whole bunch in or?
Unfortunately.
The weight.
My 3 suitcases. That's okay.
Got it, Gerald?
Hmm?
Mayor's not here.
He's online, right?
Was he?
Not yet.
Not
I
yet.
just sent him a text asking if he was presiding from afar, but he hasn't given me any special instructions.
Hmm.
I don't.
Well,
I didn't
Savannah's
remind
in the mayor's chair, so.
Hot potato.
And I forgot to download the,
Want me to bring you one?
unless it's possible to connect to the Wi-Fi here and access my emails.
That's.
Nope.
No hairpins. You can only go
Yeah.
out from here, you can't go back in.
Okay.
No, bring you up one.
Technology.
Their IT guy.
I don't know what hairpin technology.
So you can only go one way.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
any.
because hairpins can only go one way.
You know, a hairpin turn.
Yeah.
It's just a euphemism. It's like you can't look back at our servers, you can only go out from here. They cut off anything that looks back.
What?
We don't need to be one of those cities that looking for a ransom note.
Well, that's what we're trying to avoid. Very hard. And I mean, and that may be the next jump in technology that we have to do, because going to a more cloud-based system versus maintaining a lot of our servers. That you've made everybody jealous with the food you've had here. There's plenty of cake here, everybody.
Looks like plenty of pizza too.
Plenty of pizza. Get your sugar high from the cake, it's very good.
Many cakes was it one great big?
It was one
massive-
big sheet cake. And we were hoping to have more people. I mean, I gotta give Cheryl the credit. She put this all together, we were trying to get people to come in and, it's difficult. So,
I didn't see that message until today when oh, whoops.
we were worried if we ordered too small, then it wouldn't be enough,
Right.
it's,
Better to have more than.
people have been able to take some home with them, which is fine.
Yeah.
But, after a while, if it is gonna go stale no matter what.
Yours is still printing, Gerald. but-
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long packet.
We can get started. Huh? Okay. We'll get started with the work session. I'm assuming John will take over when he joins, but or not. So basically, all we're doing is turning it over to the school district to give a presentation, right?
Yep.
All right, let's do that.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be able to actually be in the same room with y'all after a little over a year, I think.
Yeah.
Spend a little time with you doing a deep dive. This is very much similar to what I did with our school board about a month ago to give them an opportunity to really dive into the budget a little bit, because I know that that's often a conversation with the city council and the board to make sure that everybody knows basically a little bit more about exactly where all of our money's going. Genevieve Hollins, our business manager, she's on the Zoom and she's available for questions. I also want to recognize Sandy Martinson, our board president, is present in person, and both Darlene Trigg and Jill Peters, board members, are present with us by Zoom this evening, and I don't know if anyone else will drop in at some point. So,
Thanks.
all right, so we were having some difficulty with letting me have total control over the presentation. So basically, I'm going to just tell Brian, scroll if he needs to. All right, so Brian, if you could do me a favor, we're going to scroll down to page II in the budget. Keep on a little bit. Okay, a bit more. All right. So this is our timeline for our budget every year. So we started in January with the first budget presentation to the school board. And then after a little bit of time, we watched for changes happening at conversations happening in June. That might indicate any changes to the base student allocation. Start to have some preliminary conversations with the city manager regarding where we might be from the city council, adjust as needs begin to evolve for the following year. And so that brings us to where we are here, actually right before the final budget is presented to the board for actual adoption. And that is conversation with the city council. And then we'll have the formal adoption where it's completely finalized for presentation to the city council will be at a special session on the 27th. So we're getting close to the end of the conversation. Okay, so the budget is an ever-evolving picture, as I'm sure you're very much aware. So we're starting out with some assumptions about how we're going to be funded for the coming school year. So luckily, there's no conversations about cutting the base student allocation coming out of Juneau. However, there's no conversations about increasing it either. There's some things floating around that are still in bills that are moving through the legislature, such as increasing funding for homeschooling, which I've seen a lot of movement. Senate Bill 111, which we're watching with great interest, which is the Alaska Reading Bill, but would contain some funding, half funding for preschool. But there's some, we'll have to see how that is all going to play out as it moves through the committee. It's a committee, we're coming up with a committee substitute is coming, so we're watching that one very carefully. So as you can see, as we'll see later in some of our graphs, our enrollment has shifted quite a bit over the past year. And so we're projecting 676 students. We always try to project a little conservatively. We don't like to project too low because we need to make sure that there's enough money allocated for us at the state level, but we don't want to over project and then end up having to make some budget cuts as we move through the school year. So we are projecting a slight increase in correspondence students. Over the past couple of years, our numbers for correspondence has hovered around 15 to 18 by the time we hit our count period in October. We anticipated that as we went through COVID, we had a significant number of families, well over 50 that enrolled in the homeschooling program. While most of them have indicated that they want to go back to school next fall, we knew that some families were going to try it and say, maybe this is what we want to continue with for our parents. So we are projecting, over conversations with those that are currently enrolled, we will see a slightly higher number for the coming school year. We have what are called intensive students. Our intensive students, of course, are those students who are special needs and their needs are severe enough that the state actually treats them as though they were 13 students. And that's basically enough typically to fund an aid for them, as well as any other special equipment or other needs that they may have. So we're projecting approximately 13 students for the coming year. We are also in something called hold harmless. So hold harmless is a way that the legislature basically protects a school district if we see a dramatic drop in enrollment. So for Nome Public Schools is a little interesting because we're only looking at brick and mortar enrollment. Many districts across the state we know had dramatic decline because students left their district to pursue homeschooling over this past year. However, Nome has its own homeschooling program. And so majority of families that felt that homeschooling was the best way to approach schooling during the pandemic, they stayed within the district rather than going out to IDEA or Raven, which are the large homeschooling programs, which are under completely different school districts. So a lot of districts lost enrollment because those students left the district entirely. We lost brick and mortar enrollment, but while we still had an overall decrease, we were in a much better financial position because our students went to correspondence. We got less money for them, but we didn't lose them entirely, which would have been it would have been a completely different conversation we would have had over the past year if we didn't have that program in place. However, because we did have that drop in enrollment, the state has a program that they call Hold Harmless. So basically, it's a way to slowly decrease the BSA from the state as a district begins to adjust to a rapid decline in enrollment. So this year was technically year one. And what the state does is they say, okay, your last year before the drop, we use that as your kind of your base year. Then we look at how much you would be funded in this year. And we're going to give you 75% of the difference that first year to kind of cushion the blow. For the next year, if we still enrollment stays low, if we, which it's possible because we have students that went back out to Bering Strait or went to Anchorage or left the state entirely, then we'll get 50% of the difference between that base year, which was last year, and this coming year. If our enrollment kind of rebounds a little bit, which it may, if the enrollment decrease was due to COVID, then the hold harmless won't kick in, but we'll get a higher number of students in the base student allocation. So either way, we should be okay finance-wise. So, but this is a little bit of a little cushion there as we do drop that enrollment. If we see a decline for a third year in a row next year, the following year in FY23, the hold harmless drops to 25%. And the fourth year, you get none of it. You have to, basically the idea is by then you've made your all adjustments to your staffing and everything, and that you should be back in a good financial position. So the rest of these things here are all of the different multipliers that the state goes through in its formula. There's a cost differential because they realize that compared to Anchorage, it's more expensive to do everything here in a rural area. So our differential is 1.45. So every student is actually like 1.45 of a student. Then we get a little money for CT to support our CTE program. There's a little bump of 0.15. Special needs is based on the number of special education students on IEPs that we have in the district. And then they multiply all that with the BSA, which is $5,930 per student. And then they add our night correspondence students to that. They're based only on 90% of the BSA only. That's it. Okay, and then some other things that we have for revenue is what they call the TERS and PERS on behalf. This has to do with the fact that when it comes to many pension programs, the number of people that you have that are on decline over time, that are paying into the pension system. So somewhere along the line, somebody has to make up that shortfall. And the district, so we have to make up some of it, but the state also covers some of that shortfall and kind of gives it back to us. So that's what we call the on behalf. So basically it's a zero net effect. It's kind of how that goes through, but we're getting to the point where over time, some of those numbers may decrease, and so that revenue might come in, might not be coming in, but the expense might not be going out. We're looking at the requesting from the city an appropriation of $3 million, which is the same as what we received last year. This year, it was slightly higher. That's because the the council elected to pass through some of their CARES Act funding to help support some of the district's additional expenses due to the COVID situation. Impact aid goes up and down. It really depends on our students that are enrolled, that are living on property that can't be taxed, which is usually federal government property. So that goes, and how much we actually get, that's very difficult to predict. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. So we usually base on what happened last year and then go from there. And then our E-rate, again, that's the funding from the federal government that helps cover 90% of our eligible internet expenses. In this case, this portion of E-rate covers the actual internet service. So we're going to get $725,000. It's actually less than last year because we have a new contract coming up with a vendor that's charging us much less for the same amount of bandwidth. But unfortunately, it also means that our E-rate revenue, the offset, comes down as well. And then we have our other revenues, and that's rent from the renting out the teacher dorm. That's donations and contributions, charging at the games, etc. And then we are pulling some of our savings out to the tune right now of $422,000. So every year we tuck some of the savings, and sometimes we have to pull some out. Right, if you scroll up a little bit more, Brian, thank you. All right, so what are changes for spending money? The good news is there's not a lot of dramatic changes to the coming year's budget. Our biggest change in the budget is our step increases, or the salary and wages increase for all of our certified, classified, and administrative staff. So that is our largest increase from year to year, and that's one of our dangers of flat funding, is that our staff typically, even if we have retirements or resignations, when we bring in younger staff over time, those costs will continue to climb. Another one is health insurance. We budgeted for a 5% increase. Districts have been lucky in that last year we got a 0% increase to our premium, which is kind of unheard of. When I was teaching, we would get anywhere between 8 to 12% every year. We up the rates. However, we had a really bad year. It was kind of a reset. We came back. We had kind of a reset year, and the overall usage has been expected usage versus actual usage of claims has been lower, and so we're waiting to hear what our insurer is going to offer us, and so we budgeting for 5%. We're hoping it'll come in underneath that because the usage is actually lower than anticipated. There's no changes to our contribution for PERS, which is the retirement system for classified staff, and TERS, which is the teacher retirement system. So, and then everything else is based on what we need and what we have available. Please note, we are going to transfer 2 classified staff positions to COVID grant funding. So that doesn't change our overall staffing. We don't have to cut, or nobody's in danger of losing their positions this coming year. We're not cutting anybody, we're not laying anybody off. but we are moving some of this to our grant funding in order to try to lower our use of our fund balance. So these, of course, are funds that are not going to last forever, depending. We have up to 3 years to spend them, but depending on what we choose to expend those funds on, they could be gone in a year or two. It depends. Not necessarily means that we'll make it to the end of the 3rd year. Okay, when we look at Nome Elementary School, okay, the same staffing levels as we had in FY21, so no real major differences or changes there. At Anvil City Science Academy, we have been moving things around a little bit. This past year, we made a determination that we were trying to bring Ms. Leeper and give her more administrative time. She's a principal teacher, which means she spends about half of her day teaching and then the rest of the day trying to handle administrative duties, which can kind of be a challenge if a discipline issue arises and you're teaching a class and somebody's got to jump in there. And there's a lot of work that goes into the administrative side in addition to preparing for her classes and everything. So we were trying to find a way this year to try to give her more time to adequately address the needs of her students and move her more towards full-time principal. And at the time, we felt the best way to do that is to bring in somebody that could do reading classes and be special education and address the special education caseload at the charter school. And we weren't able to find anybody till right in the middle of the year. So we were able to address that at least partially. But for the coming year, we looked and the caseload at ACSA is dropping quite a bit, just a few students. And our extensions homeschooling teacher, Ms. Ventris, we moved her to full-time last year simply because she went from having 18 kids to having 50 plus kids in her program. However, we don't anticipate that it's going to be that high, but she wants to stay full-time. So she's actually going to step in and teach half-time at the charter school and then be half-time running the homeschooling program. So we kind of move things around a little bit. But again, this fills that need at the charter school to give Ms. Liebert so that she will have fewer classes. I think she's only going to teach 1, maybe 2 classes next year. At the high school, this past year, if we'll scroll up just a little bit there, Brian, thank you. Our college and career guide position, we had to drop at half-time because that's a position that's completely funded outside of school by donations, basically. Sitnasock Native Corporation awarded us a donation large enough to cover that position back to full-time for this coming year. And then we moved that half special education position that was at the charter school this year over to the high school. With the movement in population, we are going to need another teacher at the high school for this coming year. So we kind of move that around a little bit. So if you look at the district-wide, we're reducing the extension teacher to half-time again because she's going to be picking up half-time at the charter school. We dropped our transfer to our food services fund a little bit. Every year we have to put some money in there because we don't receive 100% reimbursement for all of the meals that we serve at the schools. However, due to the COVID pandemic, we have switched the summer food service program over. That typically is only in the summer. It's been in place all year long, and that has a slightly higher reimbursement rate for meals. So that means that we've had to draw less on our food service fund to cover what isn't paid for. However, our people transportation, we're not changing that. However, we are not making any transfers, we're not planning for any transfers next year into CIP or into the apartment fund. And that's actually pretty significant because CIP funding helps cover all of those things that we can't normally pay out of grant funding. So that's fixing and upgrading and remodeling and repairing large projects around the school district. We've been very lucky in that we've had a little bit of underspending in a couple of years. We've been able to tuck a little extra money away for that. However, as we're finally addressing some longstanding issues, that fund is getting spent down. So we figure we could take the hit the following year and not put any money in there, but that's not a long-term solution either. All right, so those are just some overall considerations here. So if you scroll up to this next page here, and most of these we've kind of discussed a little bit here. We have the city appropriation, $3 million. The $9 million is the how much we're expecting from the state. You'll notice that again that's a small decrease from this current year. And the difference in the city appropriation, of course, is the extra 165,000 from CARES funding we're not anticipating this year. Again, there's the TERS and PERS on behalf that are in there. Impact aid, we received, last year, we received 60,832, and we have budgeted for 80,000 this year, and I think it came under that. So again, that's the big drop in that particular line item from year to year. And then our E-rate, again, comes down a little bit. It increased from FY20 to FY21 because we increased our bandwidth. We went up to 25 megabytes at each school or 75 megabyte download speed. Also, that jumped up, and then of course it's down. It's just about the same for this next year. And then we see our gate fees, and then the fund balance. So you'll see 2 years ago, we actually put 666,000 into the fund balance, and this year and next year, we're gonna draw some back out. Put it in savings, for a rainy day, and it's raining. All right, if you could scroll up a little bit, Bryant, thank you. Okay, so this is just kind of a breakdown. Where does our money come from? As you can see, 62% of our money comes from the state. A little over 20% comes from the city, and then there's kind of with a variety of everything that we get there, but about 80% of our funding comes from a combination of city and state funding. All right, if you scroll to the next page, this is again monitoring our fund balance, how much we have on our fund balance and how much we use. And then by law, we have to keep 5% of the current year's budget in there at the end of the year. We have to keep some money in there. We always have what we call some prepaids. We have the cost of our the value of the fuel that we haven't used yet, that we've purchased to get us through the summer months until our next fuel delivery comes. Impact aid sometimes takes a while for it to get there. It drops into what we call the exemptions for that. So we're also not allowed to keep more than 10%, although there is some legislation moving through Juneau that might waive that and allow us to keep more money. Part of the conversation is because of the influx of COVID funding that's coming in, we might see districts shifting some items that are normally being paid out of general funds onto the COVID funds. As a result, the fund balance at the end of the year might be more than 10%. And so they wanted to make sure that districts were still able to keep those for spending, but that would be a one-time exemption. We had one last year where they, part of the emergency proclamation by the governor, they were able to actually lift that fund balance entirely. This year they're looking at, there's been numbers floating around anywhere between 25 and 50% of the entire budget, which I think are kind of high. And there's also conversation with trying to get them to move it up to 15%, just keep it there for the future. That would give districts more flexibility. Keeping 25% or 50% of your budget in the savings account doesn't necessarily mean you're not spending it on the kids, that's what we're here for. We're not here to save money for a rainy day, and though we have to do a little bit, we need to make sure that we're spending and taking care of our kids and getting them the best education possible. So as you can see here in the graph, we've kind of been all over a little bit as far as how much we've been able to tuck away over the years. And as you can see here, it's running anywhere between 1.2 million, which is low, which is back in 2013, which is where we're going to estimate we're going to end at the end of the year. And our highest was in 2020. And that was, again, when they waived that cap. We were able to tuck a little bit more away for this current. All right, so if you scroll down a little bit, some of the other things we have to watch are where are we spending our money in by category. So all the way up, if you scroll a little bit, there we go. All right, so this kind of says how much are we spending on just basically instruction, and that's everything that has to do with teaching kids, typically salaries, wages for teachers, actual supplies for in the classroom, for things like that. And then how much are we spending on special education instruction? Those are our special education teachers, all of their salary and benefits, and any supplies that are specifically attributed to special education students. Special education support includes our district office staff. And then support services for students, those include our paras and support services for instruction. Our paras are in support services for instruction. And then our school administration. There's always conversation about how much of your budget is spent on administration. So we spend 5% of our overall budget. And that's all your principals, your assistant principals, that's me, that's our directors, everything like that. Okay, actually, the school administration is just your principals. And then the school administration support, district administration, that's myself and the directors. We're 2% of the budget. And then any expenses associated with the school board, district administration support, that's our business office. Maintenance and operations, as you can see, is a pretty large chunk of our budget. It's the second largest chunk after instruction itself. So that's about almost 20% of our budget. Goes to everything that has to do with M&O, which also includes heating, electric, trash, and then keeping all the vehicles running, keeping all the vehicles gas, fuel, heat, everything like that is in that particular line item. And then down here, it just kind of lists us, where do we actually move the money? So if you scroll just a little bit more. So you can see back in FY20, typically we put about $150,000 into food service. That's kind of been our historical number that we plop in there. We're dropping it again down to 75%, which is savings of half, just simply because that we built kind of a little bit of a cushion up in there, plus the larger than normal reimbursement from the federal government for that one. Transportation's always been $40,000. The state gives us some money, but it's never quite enough to cover the costs of running our buses. And then CIP, so you can see, we actually put money into CIP for the last couple of years. This year, we're not going to put any money in there. And then again, the apartment fund, some years we don't put anything in there. We had back in at the end of FY20, when we kind of had a large balance from underspending, and then we put $85,000 in there. The apartments, we don't get any assistance from the state in case there's any major maintenance or renovations. We have to pay for that 100%. Money in there in case we need the apartment building, etc. All right, and then the next slide here. One of the things we used to actually, by law, we used to actually have to show that we were spending at least 70% of our budget, overall budget, everything, on instruction. And if we didn't, we had to actually submit a waiver. However, most of the rural districts in the state of Alaska, simply because of the cost of doing business out here, were almost always never able to quite meet that 70% mark. So the legislature a couple of years ago finally removed that. However, as you can see, we're still spending very close to that old requirement as far as what we're spending. And then, so that's basically on kids, things that directly impact kids, and everything else, administrative maintenance and operations, etc. Things that don't directly touch and impact kids are 30% of our budget. And then we just, again, that breaks it down even further. See the percentages overall, how we spend our money here. This is another way of looking at how we spend things. Okay? So obviously the largest expense to our school district, almost $5 million out of our budget every year, is teachers. That's their pay and their benefits. And then next, of course, is our classified staff, and then utilities, okay? And then everything else we have, purchase services. Those include a lot of our technology, those types of services, anytime we contract with somebody else to do some work for us. And then, of course, down here, most of these things are very minor, and then we have supplies, which are obviously things for kids. All right, if you move down to the next one, this is how we look at how much we're spending on actual payroll. Okay? So, again, our certificated payroll and their benefits. Certificate payroll is 32.8%, classified 9.43%, benefits is 18% of our overall budget. Here is expensive in Alaska. All right, and then here's looking at things that are not payroll and how are they broken out. Again, utilities is our largest expense that is not a payroll-related expense. It's heating and electric. And just This is one of the things that's driving at some point as we get later and possibly at the beginning of next year. I'd like to come back to the council and talk to you about how we've been using all the CARES funding that's coming our way. We have our second bucket of CARES funding, which is a little over 800,000, is now in place for the next couple of years. We're only going to expend a small portion of that simply because they kind of said, it's March, here you go, here's your money. So we're still having conversations around spending it, but we anticipate, we don't have the exact dollar rate from the third bucket, which is the American Recovery Plan, is probably going to be somewhere in the vicinity, I'm guessing, between 1.3 and 1.5 million. And when we get that, we're not 100% sure. We're supposed to get guidance at the end of April about how to spend it, all the specifics on that. So it might come as early as May. So we will just kind of have to see. But one of the conversations that we're having, one of the interesting things is one of the allotted, one of the allowable things that we can spend all this money on is improving HVAC, windows, doors, all that type of thing to improve airflow and air conditions within the building and really in a response to COVID. And we're trying to bring our DDC control system, which is how we control all the HVAC around the system. It's been offline for several years, not working well. We're spending a significant number of manpower manually trying to adjust the hot and cold running classrooms that we have in our buildings. And this is probably, so if we get the system back online and working properly, we can bring down the number of man hours that we're spending on that and spend them on other maintenance projects that needs to be taken care of. And it's likely to start bringing down hopefully our heat and electric usage as well. So we believe this will be long-term savings for the district to get this thing online. Of all of our employees, 66% of them are certified, so that includes teachers and administrators that hold some type of a certificate, classified or not. And then break down a little bit, you can see 52% of our staff overall are teachers, over half of our staff are teachers, and then the next largest group are our teachers' aides or paraprofessionals. Our administrators, 9%, our office support staff, that's all of our secretaries, our business office, et cetera, is another 9%. So that's where the majority of our employees are. All right, so I'll go quickly through the schools here so we have plenty of time for questions. So here at Nome Elementary School, you can see that overall the largest change, as I mentioned earlier, is what it says regular education and special education. That is increases on the salary schedule for our teachers and our special education teachers. That is the largest change. And that does also include their benefits as well. And then again, there's small down here because all of these people down here, the librarians, the principals, all of the aides and everybody else also gets a little bit of a pay raise every year. And then our operations and maintenance is basically, again, heat, electric, water, and everything for the trash for the elementary school. So as you can see down here, we there's no, when it looks at students, we're anticipating budgeting kind of the same number of students from the elementary school for the following year. Some changes in moving teachers around between grants and not grant funded. Additional classified staff as we look at how we're going to distribute our special education paraprofessionals in response to where the students are, and no change in administrators. So the actual the pupil-teacher ratio is going to go down a little bit with moving teachers on and off of grants. So, and one exciting thing at the elementary school that will hopefully be coming down the pike is NACTEC has received a multi-year, multi-million-dollar grant called Engineering is Elementary. And we're actually going to have a specials teacher that is from BSSD that'll be there. It'll rotate because they're hiring 4 teachers. There'll be a different one every week. But our students will actually have engineering as a special next year. So that's really exciting. We'll be working with pre-K and all the way up into the high school level as well. So that's kind of exciting there. I'm not going to dive too deeply into the specifics of the budget here. Like I said, very little has changed. We did make a few changes. We increased the amount for textbooks because next year our reading program expires. This year we're adopting a new math program. Next year our reading program expires, so we have to put some money in to cover that. We put in 100,000 for, that covers 6 years worth of material, so hopefully it'll come under that, but we budget a little high and then it comes in low. Other than that, on page 18, we do have the support services students. We do see we're moving one position to grant funding, so that's why you see that $60,000 drop. That's our behavior specialist, moving that individual over to the grant for the coming year. All right, and then moving on to Anvil City on page 20. Okay, again, the change in this is because we're moving kind of the half-time position for special education out of that particular position. And we're also moving a little bit more of Ms. Reaper's time out of her teaching time and more to administration time. So that's all those changes that you see there. So she's going to be less of a teacher and more of a principal next year. So that's why we see that change. And then that special education, again, is moving that half-time position out. We only budgeted for a 50, we changed the budget so that it's only 0.5 for this last year because we only hired a teacher in the middle of the year. So that's why that we see that change there is only 25,000. So overall, it's a slight decrease in the budget for Anvil City, just due to moving those positions. Okay, other than that, no major changes to that particular school's budget other than that. So moving on to Nome Belts, which is on page 23. Okay, again, the changes that we see here, overall increase here is due to increases in teacher pay. And that large increase for special education is moving that half position, basically, ends up being a full position over to Nome Belts by moving some of the positions, other positions around, so that they have enough teachers there to manage the caseload for next year. Okay, and then the only other major change here is under school administration support. You see it's dropped 10%. Again, that's taking the behavior specialist and moving them onto the COVID grant for the following year. They'll be paid out of grant funds. So other than that, no changes in projection for student count. We base this coming students count on last year's student count. So again, the number of teachers changes a little bit with the addition of the teacher. We are in need. This is where we're trying to reach out to our community. Our cultural studies teacher, Ms. Wallach, is leaving us. We're very sad that she's decided she needs to move on. That's going to be our biggest challenge, I think, for the coming year is to find somebody. It needs to be a local community member that they can. You don't have to be a certificated teacher. You can give what we call a type M. So if you know anybody, send them to Ms. Gray, and we'll help them get certified and everything. So that will be that person is an important function for our Alaska community. So that's going to be one of the most challenging positions to fill. Hey, and then other than that, everything in the budget is basically, like I mentioned, it's basically on the increase in wages is having an impact overall on our budget. Other than that, we don't have any major changes to how we're allocating funds for the coming year. All right, and then last on page 28 is the district-wide costs, okay? Again, the drop in extension funding is both because the teacher is moving to half-time, and of course we anticipate a large decrease in the number of students. So the number of the amount that we have for the student allotments will drop as we have fewer students. Okay, and then our technology budget looks like it goes down because our E-rate will cost less. Okay, but the revenue we get a little, but overall it is a savings there to the district. Okay, and then so going through that a little bit in detail, because that's a lot of stuff kind of lumped together. Again, you see the changes and extensions here on the first page. On the next page here is just basically making some changes under the truing up basically where we budgeted for people for their wages and benefits versus where they actually showed up. for the coming year. Support services instruction, that is our federal programs director. She is approximately 70% covered by grant funding, or county grant, so offset a large portion of the salary and benefits. And then there's just some other minor adjustments due to looking at spending patterns for the past year. Under technology, we did have some discussions around the number of days in the contracts for our tech team. Our tech team has been doing more and more over the past year. I mean, obviously, there's been some major draws on technology as we kind of got through COVID with adding a virtual school. We've been doing a lot of other upgrades with software, hardware, trying to move in the direction we're rewiring everything for our fire alarm upgrades that we have to do by code. So we increased the number of days in their contracts by a small amount. And then again, you see that big drop of 89,000. That's going to be spending less on E-rate. On our internet for the coming year. We're really excited. DRS, they're actually going to be making some actual physical changes to our connection. The elementary school will be connected directly to the Quintillion network. We won't be having anything on GCI at all. It'll be 100% on Quintillion. We'll be building a little tower. You'll see that over the summer, a little tower over by the high school. It'll either be located by the greenhouse that's on the other side of the access road, or potentially in one of the courtyards, and that'll be a direct microwave connection with the elementary school to connect those two. So we've been having some internet outages periodically, especially over the past couple of months, and that should take care of that problem entirely, minor outages. So we're kind of excited about that. Spend less and get better service and get better internet. It's always a good situation. All right, and then no real changes. The Board of Education, et cetera. Again, our support staff, that's our hardworking business office, and there's some increases there in that PERS that we have to make up that's offset by what we get from the state to cover the difference in pensions. That's always fun. And then we're going to be decreasing some of the amount that we're getting in, that we're spending on our professional technical services. Although we're implementing some new cost-saving, hopefully cost-saving software as well this coming year. Okay. And then as operations and maintenance, just kind of making some adjustments and moving some things around as far as how much we actually expended. Some of our staff over time, our contract with Nana Management Services, if we have staff that separate, resign, or are terminated, those positions are moved over to Nana to fill. So there's some decreases there, okay, and some other increases just based on expenses that we anticipate or will need for the coming year. We have a lot of new, but our maintenance staff appears to finally stabilized out a little bit, which is actually pretty huge given everything that we've seen in the past couple of years. So we're going to start investing some training in some of them as well to get them up and running and doing a better job there. And then the last section there is just looking again at the transfers into the other funds. And then the last couple pages here is to just take a look at our enrollment versus the base student allocation. So you can see we've been flat funded. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 5 years in a row that the legislature has put no money into the BSA. And there's no conversation to make any of those changes. So you can see we've come a long way since FY07 when we had 750 kids enrolled in the school, and then there was a quick step down and we stayed. And then the last high year we had was FY16 with 730, and then we kind of dropped down a little bit, and then we were kind of a little bit on upward trend, and then you can see what COVID did. So we went from 713 to 687 kids. So we hope we'll see a rebound this coming year. And then the next slide, which is the next to last, is looking at the city and the the city's appropriation. So the blue is the maximum that the city is allowed to give every year, and the red is the actual appropriation. So you guys can see that this year was the all-time high of 3.165 million. And then, 3 million last year, and then the year before, 3 million, and then you guys gave us a little bump for something in the middle of the year, an extra $78,000. So we're really pleased. And so this year, you guys are up to 87% of your cap. So we are very appreciative that the city has definitely put forth some effort and shown that, funding our schools well is important, and we appreciate that. Okay, and then the last one is just our balance sheet, which you can dig around in if you really, really enjoy it. It's just, there's our assets, and there's our liabilities, and there's our balances. So that is the end of my deep dive with you, and then I am here and available, as is Genevieve, if you have any specific questions.
Just out of curiosity, the immersion stuff, it looks like you were kind of hired to continue on from kindergarten. How does that fit into the?
Yes, so one of the conversations that we had, there was a lot of concern over how to make the program sustainable. While we will continue to need outside funding to help really flesh out the program and make it very robust and work well for our kids, one of the conversations we had is that the district was willing to basically commit one of our classrooms at every grade level if we had a teacher that otherwise met our requirements. So we're very excited that depending on action by the school board, we have the retired teacher who wants to come out and be our second emergency teacher. That's Ms. Amy Conger. She's expressed some interest in returning to that. And so tentatively, we're looking at taking a new class of kindergartners, and that Ms. Kiminux for Kinders will loop up with her to first grade the following year. So, this is, I appreciate the support from our principal. Immersion programs don't work well if you don't have good site support. And, it kind of impacts the entire campus, because we get teachers that have to kind of move around a little bit every year to make room for those changes. And the staff has been very supportive of it. We're really excited because we've seen some definite increase overall in language usage. That's become something that's just become part of the school culture a little bit. So we're really excited to do that and continue. We will be looking at ways to fund another individual aid in that classroom so that kids can hear conversations between adults, part of that immersion experience. And also ways to support the curriculum development, because pretty much everything has to get translated into NUPIAC. So every single worksheet, all the things you normally put up on the walls, books, everything. And that's a Herculean effort that has to be done either over the summer or in off hours. So that's a lot of work.
I didn't know.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited we're finally getting some movement on this.
Anyone else?
On the balance sheet, just looking at the year to year, it looks like there's a big increase of assets from 17 to 18, and then it jumped up again to 19, went from like 2.8 up to 5.3, and same with the liabilities, kind of correlated with that, and this fund balance stays around the same. And it seems like the biggest line item is just due to other funds. What changed so much in between having 1.9 cash up to 4 million up to 7.5 million cash? What's
That's increases in CIP and equipment funding. So we have about 3 million in the CIP funds, which are starting to plow through. So you tuck it away, and then we're starting to actually have to address it. So typically, that's one thing we get when we get to the end of a school year, when we're truing up everything. If there's, we can't go over that 10% cap. We have to put the money somewhere. And so typically CIP is one of the places that we tuck it away. And also we had money that's been building up in the apartment fund over time. So a significant chunk of that apartment funding is now going to go towards the new apartment building. Okay? because the school district committed that we would put money towards that, kind of our investment in it, as well as the AHFC grant that we received. And then it seems like we've been putting a lot in CIP, but we've since 3 years ago when the state funded the roof replacement for Belts, which is we're still working on, they have put no funding into any major maintenance projects across the state. And it's not likely, we're waiting to see, there is some rumors of some infrastructure coming from the federal government that's specifically about schools. But we don't know what restrictions and how much we're going to get. But if you look at some of the projects that are on our this year, some of them are in the $1 million range just for like a single project. And so after the roof, the DDC control system is one of our major issues. We need to replace our generator. We have a generator that is undersized so we really can't ever use the high school really as a true emergency site because the generator won't go very long and won't power enough. And also every time the generator goes off, we have to evacuate our maintenance building because somebody, I don't know how long ago, decided it was good to put a diesel generator inside a building with inadequate ventilation to the exterior. So that's almost $2 million with that and all of the associated upgrade to the wiring and everything. So that's a $2 million project that we have to figure out how to fund ourselves if the state will give us nothing. We need to do some serious upgrades to the elementary school fire system. That's about $500,000, and that's one thing we're going to tackle next. So looks like we got a lot of money in there, but we're probably going to have to spend a lot of money out of there in order to take care of some of the things unless the state steps up or we get a nice chunk of money from the federal government, but we'll have to see how that goes. I'm not going to count any chickens until I see some cracks in the egg.
Jennifer?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay. Mark, anything else? Sarah? I don't have any questions.
I guess I do have one to bring up. I was talking to somebody on the phone today, told me about this upcoming meeting. He was a former Nomite, was more involved with, doesn't live here anymore, but he was more involved with the schools and politics, all that kind of stuff, quite a while ago. And at one time, he said that people used to come all the time to the school and to the city council saying that our teachers' pay is way lower than the rest of the state, and that's one reason why. And he's wondering if, because one thing he said, so we have a meeting with the school district, was to give the teachers more pay. They need more pay. And I'm just wondering how we are in retrospect with the rest of the state as far as competitive wages for the teachers.
Well, actually, at our last negotiated agreement, which was last year, when we went through our certified negotiations last year, we had some real conversations around the salary schedule. We looked at both our surrounding districts and also like-sized districts across the state as well. And we were towards the bottom. And, typically it's something the teachers come to the table and say, give us more money. And this year's administration going, we need to give you more money. That was our conversation, that we need to pay better. Also, the big challenge is that typically salary schedules are kind of tilted one way or the other. They're tilted towards, let's pay the new teachers a little better to really attract in the young teachers. Or it's tilted towards, and in which case then, the older teachers will either bottom out or the pay increases they get after a certain point in time are extremely small. So that becomes, as teachers kind of get to that point, then they start scratching their heads and saying, how long do I want to commit to the district if there's another district that I could move to and potentially make more money? So we wanted to, we really need to address both because we do have a pretty good core of teachers that are part of our community. And we talked about the fact that turnover really hurts our kids. We've seen way too much of it. Some of it's inevitable. There's just no way to get around. We're not going to keep 100% of our teachers, even though that would be awesome. But we wanted to honor those people that had committed and to this district, had been here for a long, long, long time through retirement, but also make sure that our starting salary was competitive. So we actually kind of reworked the salary schedule quite a bit, dropped it down so that teachers can go actually see a significant raise for a little bit longer before they bottom out and need to move across, which typically means an investment of their own time and money into increasing their education. And so I'm pleased to say that we're only a couple thousand right below BSSD, which is typically our biggest challenge because they're funded very differently. That's one of our big challenges is that both Northwest Arctic as a borough, they're they're larger and they fund their teachers we're funding their teachers a little better. BSSD as an REA doesn't have to rely on any appropriations. They get they don't have, they get 100%. It's like if you guys gave us 100% of what you could every year. That would be the only way that we could compete with that. And of course, North Slope, which is another one, that's kind of difficult because their borough gives, almost up to the cap every single year. And there are other organizations that put a lot of money into the school. But I think with the last one, and you can actually see that reflected by there's a pretty significant chunk of increase in the salaries and wages for our staff over time. And I think that was one way I think we really wanted to honor them. I'm glad because, of course, then boom, along came the pandemic, which didn't help either. But I think we're in a much better position to compete with our neighbors and with other like-sized districts across that. We've made that a priority.
Anyone else? Yeah, I guess we'll take a break.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this evening. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
And pizza.
Fall asleep. Myself going again.
Right. I eat something, I start falling asleep.
Sugar.
I got stuck. I was so proud of myself. All year long, I didn't get stuck. All year long until I made it.
Boy,
At the campus.
hours.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the roads are back again.
Only two guys stopped and one totally went to the back and the other got in my driver's seat.
Was it slushy?
No, it was,
This last round of snow,
on the
though.
left side, and I just plowed into it, coming out to Main Street.
Predicting through tonight, another 4 to 6 inches or so.
I didn't look,
I heard
actually.
that, but
Yeah.
Apparently looked when he got home because he heard the same thing, but he said he didn't see what they were talking about. So he said, I don't see what they're talking about. Whatever he was looking at, he didn't see what that they were talking about.
maybe it's
So
just wet stuff, 4 to 6 inches.
Yeah.
It's gonna be,
Doesn't stick.
if it's gonna get any, it's supposed to rain. It's probably gonna be rain.
I'll say my roof is dripping like crazy. And I just got my porch down to like wood, at least a big chunk of it. And then I woke up this morning and I was like, so much for that idea.
Yeah, well, we don't have any place to put snow there anymore.
It's
crazy. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Oh, I one of the dump trucks get stuck out there on snow dump this morning.
No,
They're pulling each other out. I was like, and then they stopped coming to it. So, what happened there? But
like 35 tonight. Pretty wet.
Yeah, it's pretty wet.
Hi, Mark. Haven't seen you for a long time.
That last conversation was a long time ago.
Oh, what about
This is
you?
paying the teachers more. These teachers are not even paid.
Oh,
And I do remember years ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
We try, pay the teachers more, and I tell people, it's like, there's only X dollars.
Until we start. I would have given them a
Right.
God bless.
No, that wasn't mine.
That wasn't
Ryan can do his Spanglish, but I'm not.
Oh, again?
Yeah. I just
He
smiled.
said he had a really good trip though.
It was really nice.
Oh, you do, you're the year.
Cool.
Advocate.
We'll see you guys. Yeah, I know. I know we missed you.
Zooming on the.
Yeah, we-
board meetings, but, and I'm so sorry, I was so sick yesterday, my husband's got whatever. So I'm really glad I was just gonna, because I was gonna go anyway. I hope you feel better. I hope you feel. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot better. It's just kind of a non-productive weekend.
Yesterday, oh my gosh, I had my heater that heats the whole house. It went off 4 times, and I had to go to the west side of my house and climb that mountain and
Our house is
dig out the exhaust pipe.
really hot, and like Chevy's bedroom is really hot, Pretzy's is really cold.
So I slept on my couch because I was afraid.
Mine, our room's fine. Downstairs in the basement, like the open area, freezing cold, and the bedrooms are hot. I'm just like, crazy heat downstairs, but we can leave the doors open because I have a puppy. Like, oh my gosh. Nonsense, so I can't leave all the doors open, it's like evenly distributed the heat through the house, and it's just so buggy. I had to go downstairs and do my inventory, and my hands were just frozen by the time I got done. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just warming up, I'm freezing. My hands were just like purple. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm glad I've got 5 different zones.
See, and it's funny because the upstairs has, the 2 bedrooms that we have upstairs, their zone is, or their thermostat is outside the door, but like ours
Oh.
is in our bedroom.
Yeah,
So I'm like, I'm not sure why there's, one room is hot, one room is cold. And then downstairs, I think we have the same thing, like the,
Oh.
not, is like in this central area, not in the bedrooms. And I think that's why
Yeah.
it stays like that too. It's weird.
my house is real drafty too.
Is it?
Yeah. Had Rob Benson do a blower door test on that thing.
How'd that go?
He-
If we made a pot of coffee, would other people want it?
I'm not a coffee drinker, thank you.
I mean, if two takers.
But yeah, it took him a while because he couldn't get enough of a vacuum in there to do the test because there was so much air.
Oh,
He
God.
he eventually
I'm sorry, you're done.
he eventually completed it and said I had the equivalent of like it was like a 15 square foot hole coming in from the outside.
Just like leaving one of your doors wide open.
That was probably, what, 10 years ago?
Yeah, about
Yeah.
10, 15, yeah. So,
Yep, I broke down like 6 years ago and did my windows of my house, and then next year I did the siding.
We did our
Put a
windows,
wood stove in,
remember how
all in
long
the
ago?
same 3 years, and
yeah, I put a
leave it.
pellet stove in because one area of the house, no matter what I did, it you know, wintertime it was. So the only way to address it was to put some supplementary heat on.
Hello, Roy.
Hello.
How are you?
Guys, some coffee.
Oh, I'm good.
Hate these masks. I think we're getting real close here in Nome to the point of everybody that is willing to be vaccinated probably is, other than kids.
That's supposed to be coming up here pretty quick too, right? Or trials for
At
the
least
kids?
for like 12 to 15 year olds. The study is complete. It's been submitted to CDC. But for the younger kids, I think they're still in the final stages of the study. And it was like 100% effective for them.
Except for when he goes down Stop going on the rabbit hole.
I don't know. I figure once everybody that have the vaccine has had a chance to get it, then there's really no reason to protect the rest of them.
Hey,
Hey,
I am taking Cheryl's gardening class.
cool.
And I don't know if your daughter's interested at all. Thinking about community gardening.
Oh,
Even if
yeah.
it was just like every once in a while, I'd totally hang out with her.
Yeah.
Take that class, and Charlie's like, well, when is it? And I was like, I told him, he's like, that's like almost a whole year. I'm like, I know. I was like, I won't.
Yeah. I will say she's very flexible about timing. Like, obviously,
I
I'm
just saw
here.
how long it was.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, that too. But it's great because then you see like the various seasons and how you grow during different parts of the year. And I'm like, because I never know how early to start.
that's been one of my dream classes to take.
Me too.
But I've been on the city council or the school board, and I'm like,
Yeah, I was talking to Cheryl and I was like, Cheryl, I really want to take your class, but I teach on Tuesday, Thursdays. I got city council second and fourth Mondays. Am I going to be missing too much? She's like, no, just do it. And I stop in. I have a key to the building anyway, so I just stop in and say hi to the plants. But yeah, I was talking to Cheryl. We were like scheming about community gardening and thought of your daughter.
Yeah, I talked with her about it a month or two ago, and she was still, she's a little more cautious about the COVID stuff.
Which is fair. And how old is she?
She's 15.
She's eligible for the.
Not yet. Yeah, we're really looking forward to when they approve that.
So over COVID.
Yeah, really. Yeah, I just wish everybody'd take it serious and let us get it behind us.
Right.
Yeah, the state of Michigan is really, I used to live in Michigan, so I kind of keep track of them. I've still got family there.
Yeah, Michigan is.
Leading the nation in new cases and stuff.
Oh, I know.
Even my family that lives there, most of them are, you know, posting on Facebook, they went to this place and that place and went on vacation and went here and there and, you know, and they're not getting the vaccines.
Oh yeah, no, I just feel so bad for everybody outside of Alaska because we've had it so easy up here. And a lot of my mom's side is all in Oregon and they're trying to get the vaccine and can't get access. And
Right.
my cousin is pregnant. She's in Chicago and.
that was one thing I found very fascinating when we were in Hawaii. They were only considering giving the vaccination to 75 and older.
Yeah.
That was it. And I was like, that's really high. I'm like, we're doing it for 16-year-olds where we live. And I was like, oh my God, that's old. And they before we left there, they were just dropping it to like 65. But it took, well, we were there for 3 months. It took 3 months for them to drop it down to 65 while we were listening to that.
I would have thought Hawaii.
I know.
Would have.
I was like, the only thing I could think of is they have a very high, like, elderly population possibly. I don't know. And then 2 different shipments of their vaccine got destroyed because I didn't hear about what happened to the first one, but the second one, they had them in a deep freeze and they moved them to like a refrigerated unit and the refrigerator door didn't close all the way and some alarm didn't get heard, and so they get there Monday morning after they're supposed to like defrost it and they were all ruined, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I would just cry right then. It was like one thing after the other. They're like, it was like 1,200 doses or something like that. It was like a lot. You're just listening to the age group that they were targeting and that happening, and I was like, ooh, I'm sorry.
And that really makes me reconsider going to Hawaii. I was like so tempted. I'm like, we're getting close on vaccinations. We can test them. No, I just want out.
So the nice part is, well, when we first got there, there was like nobody there. It was so quiet there. It was like we could go to the grocery store, and usually this grocery store that we go to, there's like probably easily 15 people on each line. There was like 2 or 3 people in line, period. And then like spring break hit, and it was like oh my gosh, where'd all these people come from? It was like everybody showed up. It was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, if you want to go and not be around a whole lot of people, like now is probably not the best time. But we noticed that it was getting very, very busy at the time. But it was still, like the beaches that we went to and things like that, it was very quiet. Like people were being very, like staying away from each other, you know, like people were giving each other space. It wasn't like elbow to elbow. Of course, we're in a smaller, quieter area too, but like, people weren't trying to pile on top of each other. It wasn't like, you know, and so people were being very respectful of space and stuff like that. And then
Want that, do
we?
Don't go to Maui if you want that.
Yeah, don't go to Maui.
For 3 weeks.
No.
Oh my God, really? Okay.
Whole time.
Yeah, see, and I went to Maui in November and it was dead. It was like, my sister was like, oh my gosh, she's like, this is not the Maui that I know. And I had never been, so. And it was like, a bunch of the businesses were shuttered. There was hardly anybody in the streets. Most of the restaurants and the businesses were just closed to business because there wasn't enough people to even open them. And even in Kona where we were at, like a lot of the restaurants are still closed. And the ones that are open, they're open with limited seating and we have to have reservations to get in and, you know, so, and they have the mask mandate where you have to wear your mask in. So once you sit down, you can take it off. They're taking temperatures, they're taking addresses, they're like, and then like, they're still gonna give you a test right when you walk in the door, even though you have your pre-screened bracelet on, and I'm like, but they're like, just hold still. Okay, like.
I got that.
And then if you wanna go on the excursions that we booked, you had to have proof of your negative test, and then they had a lot of precautions going on. So, see, and that's why the Maui mayor is about ready to have a heart attack, because he's so
Our
angry.
excursions,
Lights up the room, she just kind of comes.
better wear a
At
mask.
everybody.
Are there
They didn't
schools?
have any checks.
Are there schools open? Like what's going on?
As far as I know, their schools are open, because
Yeah, they are.
one of the ladies that we know, we know a couple of school teachers there, and she was at work, so,
Yep.
yeah. So she was still teaching and, yeah.
Yeah, I was in Kona when it got shut down and they shut down the beaches and I was like, okay, fine, I guess I'm leaving.
Yeah, that would be rough. See, we had just left there as that was happening. We hit Disneyland that night, and they
That's
closed
one
Disneyland
thing
at
we
midnight that night, so we went for 4 hours.
Contact.
It was good. We had to pay full price too,
Oh, geez.
and they've been closed ever since, and I was like, whatever. So, yeah, we haven't,
Trying to.
I don't think I'd try going places like that, but, you know, they opened up all the airplanes to 100% capacity now. There's no more elbow seating, there's none of that, so if you're going, you're gonna be sitting with everybody. The airports are covered with people now. I mean, it's nothing like last year after everything shut down, and it's nothing like when we left. It was not the same. Very, very different. People are starting to be done.
I get it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, that's not what's gonna get it done. We feel done, but man, that's so crazy.
It was just really interesting to see the dynamic as we were, you know, there for a period of time and watching it change from quiet to where did all these cars come from? You know, it was just like, and Kona's fairly quiet anyway. It was even quieter than it normally is.
I think,
Different. At least out of town, we don't see
Showed 'em a
it.
different side, too.
Downtown was like,
I can tell you what one of.
son and his daughter and his girlfriend came to visit us, and
Housing
this
for
was
these
in
guys. You know, we got,
January, and they went downtown to see, you know, what the nightlife was like, and they said it was quiet, ghost town. They said, we're not going back there. I was like, okay. So, yeah. But then I drove down there like towards the last part of our stay, went downtown to drive through there, and it was pretty busy. Like lots of cars, lots of traffic, lots of people. So,
I didn't see it, that's what I was looking at, and I'm going like,
yeah, it was definitely different for sure to watch that dynamic change, and just listening to their news reports and stuff. Their stats were fairly low, like, Maui surpassed Honolulu in cases while we were there. Wow, because you're talking how, you know, millions of people, and, you know, not that in Maui, but
Many, yeah.
since the
I don't know if
people were
that's
coming, it was.
necessary.
Definitely more lax there. You don't get tested when you land. Like everybody at land, the Big Island, they get tested.
Yeah, you get tested, even with your pre-screening bracelet, you get tested.
I just
You
didn't.
don't, and
Nobody raised any red
maybe
flags.
they're gonna change the rules. who knows?
Possibly. But in November when I went there, it was like crazy. So we had to go down one way and you could only go back one way. It was like, they stood in that and then
You don't,
it was
yeah,
like
it's.
quiet. And then you got up to the counter, you know, where the people are at, and they assign you to a spot and you go give them your spot and you have to get this pink piece of paper. And that pink piece of paper was like the only way you could get out of your room without being locked in your room. Yeah, saying that you had all your requirements met, because that was before that when they were letting people in without having the test prior. You could get it, you know, like within a day or so, but without that pink piece of paper, you got locked in your room. And if you got out of your room and got locked out of it, they would report you to the police for leaving your room. I was like, okie dokie.
No, with Alaska Airlines, we had our little bracelet.
Yep, we did
plane,
too.
We walked by like thousands of people from Delta, all in a line. Delta,
Wow.
United, Alaska, because they didn't do it.
They didn't do the
Alaska
pre-screening
doesn't have
yet?
the pre-screening stuff. They're the only one who had it.
Yeah, we went through
Crazy.
Seattle and we were like, man, we better get in there early so we can get this pre-screen bracelet. And so we, you know, as soon as we landed, we had like a 3-hour layover. I landed, I went straight up to the guy because there's like a little booth and everything. We walked up and I was like, hey, what do we need to do? He's like, just give me your name. Gave him my name. He's like, okay, give me a second. I'll be over to see your party in a second. I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the kids to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And he's like, no problem. We came back from the bathroom. We were gone maybe 5 minutes and he had our bracelets. He's like, put these on immediately. Do not take them off until you are done. And we were like, yes, sir. But so we're sitting there and Charlie's like, where is everybody? I'm like, what do you mean, where is everybody? He goes, Jennifer, the flight went more than 30 minutes. There were literally like maybe 10 family units on that plane. That was it. And now, good luck getting a seat on a plane. It's like so different. It's so packed. It was like, this is.
They wanted to do anybody that didn't have their screening done on the plane.
Yeah.
We watched like a handful of people.
Because they didn't have it, they didn't have time. So we didn't see that because there was not enough people there to see that for us. Yeah, because when I went to Maui, I had literally downloaded my results as I was landing. I'm like, oh my gosh, but I had it, but I didn't have it when I got on the plane in Anchorage. It would like came in while I was in the air because I had a 6-hour layover, you know. I'm like, and my results came back in 3 hours, so like I knew it was going to be there, but like it was just really strange. So okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
You
You can have it, Gerald.
Did you get a lot of response on your request to do your classes, or are you thinking class or workshop, or what is
I was
it?
thinking just getting people together and just.
Like, what are your questions?
Yeah, League of Women Voters had a whole packet in Juneau. A lot of it's not relevant to us because
Oh,
we're
okay.
so much smaller. Like this is like where you have to do like serious campaigning, finance stuff, and all.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, that's one of my biggest hates, is that DPOC that we have to do every year.
Yeah. I know.
I'm glad they let us save it now. I'm so glad for that option.
Yeah, you just pull it up and copy and.
Copy and paste. Oh, I just have to change the dates. I forgot to change that date. Sorry.
I
Yeah.
did that last year and they emailed me, called me right away.
Did you forget to change
Yeah,
something,
I was
sir?
like, oh, yeah.
Nothing's changed, sorry.
I got my charger and my.
I know. I can tell that they don't really look at them that well, because I always put Charlie's like, if I put everything that Charlie, I'm like, I'd be here for days. So I put various and I put like over, I'm like,
Yeah.
Most of them.
like, if you guys really want to know that, I'm down. I was like, but I, you know,
I hate.
pains aren't gonna give me any money.
They're serious about the deadlines.
Yeah.
Yeah, the deadline is like,
Fined 1 year.
Yes?
Yeah.
I've never gone past the deadline. I mean,
Noise I can get.
I don't remember how much it was, but it was
Good shotgun.
Something a day, I think he said.
enough to notice.
you'll have to make you not do that again.
Right.
People want to push it. We can push it, but just FYI. Just give you a heads up. And I feel terrible, but.
That's.
So have fun with that.
This is my last term. I've decided
Yeah.
for sure.
What?
This year's been.
Gerald.
Time to retire.
Gerald.
With the new with the new voting kind of stuff, hopefully there'll be a lot of interest.
I hope so too, because I'm not doing anything.
Get some good ones.
All these guys,
Word.
no. Y'all can
Utility?
keep it all.
Go to
Nope.
utility.
I'm gonna rebel clean, you know, with my life. Yes, it's a lot of work. And between homeschooling
Something needs to give.
and my mental health is at risk. So is my family's.
I don't know why my what's up with my
Last, and I do my own getting components.
You're young, you can do it.
Do it now.
But now you still have the energy.
Let me tell you, when you start hitting some of our ages, you can't do that anymore.
Oh, you can, but you have to have a lot of naps.
my knees hurt, my
Yeah.
back hurts, my sleep wrong.
On the other hand, this is the time of your life when you should be experiencing everything that you want to.
Probably all.
Not be tied down. So I'm assuming that everything you're doing is things you love to do. But,
She's like,
Right.
I wouldn't waste time on anything that isn't fun.
part of my problem is I love it too much and it makes me physically.
Very good.
We had in the window.
So invested in it that it's just like.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
You get to,
I kind of
when you get to my age, it's like, well, if I hadn't wasted my time on that, I could have done this.
I try not to look
That's a
back.
rough time to try to do that.
Not much,
That's a lot of stress
No,
right now.
63.
I've got almost 2 years.
Going.
I just noticed,
Probably my hopes.
I used to.
All night. I'm like, I know, sorry.
Remember my mother telling me when my father was around 40, she goes, "You got to get out there and help your father. You could have a heart attack." And then when I got out there and was helping my dad at 40, I said, "Now who am I calling in sick?"
Looking up.
All right.
There you go.
Let's call a meeting to order. Nome Common Council, regular meeting of March 22, 2021. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Martinson.
Here.
Councilmember Reader.
Here.
Councilmember Topgok.
Here.
Youth Representative Okalisek.
About how to call.
Is she 434-2060?
2060, yeah.
Okay, she's online. I might have heard her, but I might have drowned her out.
Oh, yeah, she said she called in.
Yep, she's on behind you.
Cool.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. You have the agenda in front of you. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda for April 12th, 2021.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any changes, additions, deletions desired? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topgok. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And, okay, the minutes are also in front of you. Do we have a motion to approve the March 22 minutes?
Move to approve the minutes for Monday, March 22nd, 2021.
Second.
Any changes to the minutes? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topgok. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Under communications, we have a letter from AMCC Education Director Weston to the City of Nome, dated March 24, regarding thank you for a book donation. We have a memorandum of March 30 from Clerk Hammond to the Nome Common Council regarding clarification on sales tax policy for permits. Yes.
Ryan, could you enlighten us on your clarification request?
So typically, our code says that building permits are accepted from sales tax. However, in practice, the clerk's office mails out a list to builders, Grizzly, Tundra Toyo, anybody who would be doing building type activities in relation to permits. And that includes building and remodel permits that are accepted. The word remodel is not used in our code. And so historically, we have never exempted the mechanical, electrical permits. But this question actually came up, and full disclosure, it was my mechanical electrical permit that actually pulled this question. And they were totaling up my bill down at Builders, asking if I'd have a permit number and if it was tax exempt. And I had to say that no, it was not tax exempt because it was not listed in the code. However, it's an incongruity in the way that we actually practice this because it only says building permits. And if we're following the letter of the code, which we're not, only building permits would be accepted from sales tax. So my bill has already been taken. I'll be paying sales tax. I paid sales tax on the rest of it. It's not a big deal. But moving forward, I'd just like clarification. Should we be reading the letter of the code as building permits, or should we be continuing as we have been, building and remodel? What about mechanical and electrical? I think it was Keith down at Builders who made the argument that a remodel permit sometimes can only be changing out a few little things, but a mechanical electrical permit is a lot more involved than some.
Yeah,
So-
it can be $100,000.
Can be.
I see added excavation, fill, demolition, and moves.
Just because if we're at it.
As part of,
If
yeah.
we're at it, I want.
Yeah, because I looked and I saw that we had a bunch of permits you had to get, and so is it just the building permit that is exempt and all the rest of these are not? Is that for the letter of the law that you're talking about?
Letter of the law. It's,
Okay.
it's an exception, not an exemption.
And just out of curiosity, where did that exception come from? Do you have any idea, like, why somebody decided that needed to happen in the first place?
I haven't had the chance to go back through the minutes and
Okay.
try to figure it out.
Okay,
I think at least in part, it's because with a building permit, you're constructing something that's then going to go on the tax rolls, and you're going to pay property tax for the next 150 years. So also charging sales tax on the materials to construct it seemed a little excessive.
okay, because I did ask Charlie, I said, I know you do the excavation, fill, demolitions, and moves sometimes, and I said, do you pay taxes on this? And he said, yes. At this point, he does. I don't know, he doesn't do mechanical or electrical stuff, because I was trying to figure out and understand what this was actually asking. So we would have to go in and change the actual ordinance to reflect these other ones if we wanted to change it.
That would be preferable.
And the other thing it does is it provides a small incentive to actually keep the town in order.
Do you know about how much these, the sales tax garners for the city? Like how much revenue would we lose if we exempted all of these?
I don't know off the top of my head. We'd have to go through all of the, and I don't even know if that's, if it's specifically digitized that we could pull it from a database. We'd have to probably go back through and all of the exception forms. And the exception forms are, sales tax is always getting on people to report exception forms, because if you don't report an exception as you are, then you get invoiced by the sales tax office. It's a constant battle, because sometimes people don't want to do all that paperwork because it is tedious.
I'm just curious if it's worth our while to do it or not do it, like, you
Well,
know.
I mean, it's the question as I see it is there interest from the council to bring this issue to a future meeting as a potential change to the code?
Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely.
So let's
But I'd like to do it in a work session and not at a meeting.
We should
Yeah.
sit down and
If that would
discuss.
be, if that would be helpful, because I don't like having discussions during a meeting.
Right.
That takes us
Okay.
some time, and then that way people can have some time to consider it before we
Yeah.
actually bring it up for a vote, instead of trying to.
Sound reasonable?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item C is an email of April 5, 2021, from CRS Specialist James to Executive Assistant Thompson regarding a community rating system annual recertification. Doesn't look like any actions required there. Item D is a memorandum of April 7, 2021, from Finance Director Crow to Nome Common Council regarding request for reallocation of unspent NSEDC CBS funds.
I'll make a motion to reallocate the funds from the NSEDC CBS funding to the hockey rink project.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a question why we have so much money at the end of 2019. How come we have almost $20,000 left in there?
Nikki?
So there were folks that received those grants and had a real hard time spending their funds due to COVID.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but I just wanted to double check.
I have a question further about that, along that line. Are these CBS funds for city projects that were not spent, or they were for other organizational projects that were not spent? Like other organizational NSCDC fundings that were not spent?
Did you hear the question, Nikki?
The 2007
here.
funds were reallocated to the locker room facility upgrades, as well as the 2018. And then we also reallocated the 2018 to the fencing project.
When it was 2019? Well, we have a motion on the floor, we're probably gonna vote on. I'm just more curious than anything, because what I don't wanna do is I don't wanna pull money away from entities that are already allocated.
This, this money was, if you're looking at the 19 money, now, we don't know if the kids are gonna be still able to travel in 22. And I'm sure there'll be another vote on the council in regards to that. This is just unspent money. Roughly $4,200 is for the locker room project, which is not going forward because the prices came in substantially higher than what was anticipated. So, I mean, it's one way or another on the 19, but, right now, $4,000 doesn't go a long way on $1 million project.
So I think, if I understand what Mark's asking, is the projects that were supposed to be funded by this 19 end-year money, can they even roll it over to that far, or can they hang on to it, or is it, are they gonna use it or lose it? Is that why we're rolling it over into this hockey rink fund?
Well, and Nikki can speak more directly to that because she has spoken with the folks at NSEDC. But essentially, what they're trying to do is clear up their books and show this money has been forwarded to another project. And, this money will be in addition to roughly the $57,000 that the ice skating rinks folks at Nome Sportsman Association. And this will help for them to move their facility to around the rec center.
So are the recipients of the 2019 money gonna be notified that their funding is no longer available from 2019? I like that explanation way better, thank you.
Roll call, please. On the motion?
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson. Yes. Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item E is a letter of April 8th, 2021 from AMCO to City of Nome regarding transfer of ownership application. Anyone have any comments regarding this package store license transfer? Not hearing anybody jumping up. Next item is very similar, a letter of April 9, 2021 from the MCO to City of Nome regarding notice of liquor license renewal application. Anyone have any objections or comments related to that?
You choose at the A and B?
No problems, ma'am.
Alright, and then item G is the City of Nome FY22 budget calendar. So you can see we're at the April 12 school board. Then we've got a couple work sessions coming up later this month. Board of Equalization coming up May 5 to 7. I'm assuming we have some challenges so far, but usually those get resolved.
Yeah, we're up to 12 real property appeals.
Okay.
No, 9 real property appeals and 3 personal property.
Okay. Good enough. Turn the page. Citizens' comments. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment at this time? Nobody in the audience that wishes to do so. Do we have other avenues of comment available?
443-6605 is available.
Okay, 443-6605, if anyone wants to call in and make a comment. We'll wait a minute or so. So you can dial the phone. Again, that's 443-6605. Were John's suggested revisions going to be formalized at some point?
At some point.
But not yet.
That's not gonna yet.
Okay. Okay, we will have another chance for citizens' comments at the end of the meeting. I think we'll move on to new business, item A.
021-0401, an ordinance amending chapter 17.15.030, adoption of Alaska Remote Seller Sales Tax Code, first reading.
We have a motion to put this into first reading.
Move to approve first reading of ordinance 210401.
Second.
Okay. Do we have any questions, comments, discussion regarding this?
A lot to read.
Yeah. We had the work session. Does staff want to quickly summarize the what we're attempting to do? I mean, I can also, but
This is our rep.
okay, go ahead.
Basically, the Alaska Remote Seller Sales Tax Commission that we signed on last year in, I think it was either early March or late February. We signed on at a specific, we adopted the January 6, 2020 version of their code. They've recently updated their code they've updated a few definitions. And basically, we have to follow suit.
Okay. And the major changes are?
I don't know if I can as cogently say that. And I can refer back to Brooks' definitions, brick and mortar.
And something about I read something about the tax wording, so that people weren't getting taxed twice. They had to change some verbiage for, like if a business was doing, or if a company was doing business in our state, they would only get taxed once, but a company that was doing business out of state would get taxed twice. They'd get taxed by their state and our state. So they cleaned up some language to make sure that didn't happen. I know that was one of the things that I read in there that stuck out for me anyway. They started calling, instead of tax jurisdictions, they called them tax members or something like that, or something. That was one of the bigger changes that they made throughout.
Thinking of what a remote seller is.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I noticed was that, one of the things that stuck to my mind, because I know it's been discussed in the past, with local sales tax personnel, is when somebody buys a good or service, and one of the things it clarifies that if it's not received or paid for at the business location, that the sale is considered delivered to the location where the purchaser is, and that's what creates the sales tax. So what that means for here, Brian can maybe clarify is like as local businesses here, if we're sending something out to say the villages that make an order, it's based on their their sales tax in that village, right? Not the sales tax here.
Yeah.
That stays the same as the way it's been handled, right? It's just, it kind of clarifies that here.
Yeah.
Because it's going towards the people who are outside of our community that are sending stuff here.
Yeah, it's destination.
Destination that determines it, right?
Yeah. To make things more complicated, most of those are dealt with locally, whereas this specifically pertains to the commission that handles like Target and Walmart and the online remote sellers.
So our membership in this, what do we get out of it? Are we utilizing this?
Yeah, we get a check every month.
Oh, it goes through that commission then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're the
As opposed to
collecting.
they don't report directly to the city of Nome anymore? Okay.
Well, some do, but most don't. Like I think Brown Jug still reports to us, Amazon reports to us. But all of the little ones, we don't have to deal with the little ones. They just send us a check for $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 every month with all of those aggregated in. And they do all of the administration, all of the work behind it.
Wow, that was pretty cheap buy-in for that service.
There was an exclusion that was in the code previously that I don't see here. But maybe I'm not finding it, or maybe it's in a different part, whatever. But basically, it was a venue thing where the code used to say a long time ago that if any part of a sale occurred within city limits, that the entire sale was assumed to have occurred within city limits. And then we changed it because there's times that, maybe you've got a board meeting of a native corp that meets in Nome and they conduct some business that results in a sale that occurs entirely outside of city limits, both the production of the goods or whatever, the sale and the delivery is outside, but the only part that occurred within the city limits was actually inking the contract or whatever. And so that was used. And the reason I remember it so well is because it was attempted to be applied to Cape Nome products. And I was actually running the operation or overseeing it. And I mean, we were able to show that the ultimate buyers were tax exempt anyway because they were governmental entities. But the argument from the city was that because we were doing the contracts within city limits, that regardless of the fact that the product never entered city limits, that it was still taxable. So we put in a specific exemption for that.
Section D.
It's still there?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, it's,
I just didn't see it. Okay.
It's section D right here. Nothing in this section is intended to create a taxable transaction if the goods sold or rented do
It's on
not
the board.
reside or never been within the.
Yeah,
city
that's the
limits
one.
boundaries.
All right.
It's in our ordinance, not that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, this is 17.15, and that situs of taxable transaction is in 17.10.
All right. Because we wanted to make sure that we weren't discouraging boards from meeting in town or, yeah, I mean, it was almost to the point of, well, we're going to have to transfer those operations to Anchorage. So anyway, thanks for that clarification. Is there any other discussion on this first reading of the ordinance that's before us? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcott. Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson. Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item B.
021-0402, an ordinance amending Chapter 2.15 and Chapter 7.15 and Chapter 15.10 to elect city council members, school board members, and utility board members at large.
Move to approve the first reading of 210402.
Second.
Discussion? Any amendments? Any comments? Anybody want to summarize what we're trying to do?
Go ahead, Megan.
Oh, yeah, sure. So basically, this would not require people to file to run for a particular seat. So obviously, most of our seats are designated A, B, C, D. The hope is, when I was talking with folks about this idea, is that it'll make it less intimidating to run for a seat. So you won't be choosing which one, so you won't have to strategize, do I think I have a better chance at seat A versus seat B? You don't have to think about who you're running against, you just all run against each other, and whoever the top vote getters are, they get seated.
Right. Thank you.
I think this made one little change to the utility board too, didn't it? The 3-year term.
Oh, yeah, because they were 2 3 2 or something like that. Yeah.
They have 5.
Correct.
In our work session, I see that's in here 40% plus 1, that didn't change. And, but in the work session, we talked about if there was say 3 people running for 2 seats, did we determine if all 3 people would each get a 33, like 1/3, then how do you have them run? So we have 3 people,
Right.
so yeah. So we have
Right, no.
two open seats, and we have 3 people running.
Right.
They all get 33.
But that's not possible, really. I mean, it would be very unlikely.
That's what
It'd be highly unlikely.
he he
That's,
said.
that's just.
because you're voting for two. So, unless everybody split their votes just
Perfectly.
perfectly, so you get,
Yeah, gotcha.
it'd be very unlikely. It could happen. It could happen.
We'll deal with the unlikely happening of that at that time.
Right. And so we asked Brooks for some specific language to address that, and he included that, correct? The runoff language?
Maybe I missed that. Where was that?
The number of candidates in the runoff election should be equal to the number of remaining seats to be filled plus one. So if you have 2 seats available, you've got 10 people running, and say one person got the 40 plus whatever, so you've got, and then nobody else did, right? So you've got 1 seat left to fill, because you filled 1.
Right.
So then your runoff would be 2 people. If you have no one that hits the 40, like you were saying, then you've got 2 seats to be filled, so your runoff would be with 3 people. And that, in that instance, then it would be highly unlikely that you wouldn't get plurality. And I thought we said then that there's no 40, right, those receiving the most votes in the runoff election shall be elected. So that there's
Okay,
no
eliminates that-
plurality
eliminates that.
requirement in the runoff.
Okay. That clarifies that, thank you.
Okay. Cool. Anyone else? And then there's a supplemental little thing here on page 111 that tries to help. Okay. Any other discussion regarding this ordinance? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Cool. Thank you. Item C, please.
O210403, an ordinance amending chapter 7.15 to change the time for filing a declaration of candidacy.
Move to approve the first reading of ordinance 210403.
Discussion? As I understand it, this is just to make things run a little smoother, allow a little bit of time in case there's issues with the printing or whatever, to be able to actually hold an election when we say we're going to without too many hiccups. Does that summarize it pretty good?
Yep.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martin.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item D.
R210104, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Boynton Office System for leased copier printer services.
Move to approve resolution 210401.
Second.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is a 5-year lease with Boynton for $71,949.60. That's the number you should concentrate on. This is a 5-year lease, which means each year the lease is going to be $14,389.92. And it represents a savings over the last 5-year lease for $7,200 over the 5-year term. So we are getting, and plus Nikki, Dana, and Bryant sat on the evaluation team, and Boynton gets high marks from the city staff.
Good job negotiating.
That wasn't negotiating, it was bid.
Good job for receiving the bid.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcott.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item E.
R210402, a resolution reallocating unused funds originally allocated by R2012-03 to cover the salary and benefits for the Extension's homeschooling teacher of record.
Move to approve resolution 210402.
Thank you. Any discussion?
What's going on here?
You allocated as a body an additional, I believe, $60,000 in CARES funding. And it was very, get my mouth to work, specific on what it could be spent. And they still have leftover CARES money and they would like to reallocate it as simply as I can put it.
Just for clarification, the homeschool kids in our district count towards the student count for our school?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, we just had that. I'm going.
Not at the full rate,
Mine,
though,
was
right?
it?
Not at the full rate. 90%, she said.
Okay. Which is good.
Okay.
Almost full rate.
Trying to make sure I.
Well, otherwise, if it was say 10%, then we wouldn't necessarily want to reallocate money into something that we lose students in.
Right.
Okay, never mind. My question that I had originally asked myself, I answered my own self, so.
Any other discussion?
And this is an approved expenditure of COVID funding. We're not gonna get into any gray areas with our reporting or anything.
Call the question.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcott.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item F.
R210403, a resolution in support of our Asian American and Pacific Islander community members.
Okay, I see it's presented by Youth Representative Okliasek and Councilmember Topcott. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve resolution 210403.
Dies for lack of a second. No. Do we have a second?
I was waiting for her to do the thing, and I was like, okay, I guess not.
So there's some edits and I just X'd out the tab and I don't have internet.
I'll second it.
All right.
She's preoccupied with her
Yeah.
work.
She knew I was going to request that she explain what the intent of the resolution is.
Yeah, so I was talking with youth rep Zoe, and I think this last year has really forced our nation to dig into some tough topics. We saw that with Black Lives Matter. I think we're now really starting to see that now with our Asian American family and friends, and Pacific Islander family and friends. And so we thought we would do a resolution just kind of stating that, you know, we see you, we know that you're experiencing these horrible atrocities, and I don't mean to say that this is happening in Nome. I hope it's not. I haven't heard of any instances in Nome, but I don't think it hurts to put out words of support and appreciation to those who are affected by it. I mean, even if you're not directly experiencing it, obviously it weighs on you and it can have an emotional and mental toll to see what's happening on a national front. And so this is really just kind of reaffirming that, we value the contributions that they bring to our community. I'm not Asian American or Pacific Islander. I did try to reach out to some folks to get input. Again, I'm always like, nothing about us without us, same, whether it was about Native issues, Black Lives Matter, etc. So I know that part of our community is a lot smaller than some of the other stuff other resolutions in support of other groups. So it was half debating, pushing at one more meeting to try to get more input. But I did have a friend who's Pacific Islander look it over, and he generally agreed with it. He had a couple little edits, and so I didn't get them before the deadline, but I do want to incorporate them. They don't, in my opinion, change the overall message. Like hard work. He suggested using perseverance, which I think has a slight connotation to it that is important. So I'm happy to talk through if folks have questions about it or concerns. And if it helps, I'm happy to give the edits as soon as I can figure out how to turn on my hotspot. Pull that back up. Very soon. I still want to see.
All right, anyone else have any,
I don't know if Zoe has it.
A question?
She did a lot of verbiage.
yeah, so, youth representative, if you would like to, make some comments, please do. Just go ahead and unmute your Zoom.
Oh, she's having a hard time hearing.
Oh,
I just call her on my phone.
sure.
Okay, let me go down.
Let's take about a minute break, just
Okay.
get some coffee, whatever, while we get situated. Since everybody was leaving anyway.
Way to read the crowd.
If we get too much more snow, we won't be able to see out this window.
I know, I was like,
Can't see out the windows upstairs in.
oh my gosh. My back deck is like almost covered my kitchen window. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's never happened before. And there's a fox that keeps running up on the roof of the place next door to us. So it's been kind of fun to watch. It's like, hey, what's up?
8-foot drifts in the backyard, and a 6-foot fence trying to keep the dogs in.
But yeah, that's well, I suppose. Oh my.
Got about like maybe 15 seconds and then Daryl and I.
Right.
Okay, we've got our youth representative on the phone. Zoe, we're discussing the resolution in support of our Asian American and Pacific Islander community members. And I understand that you had a fair amount of input into this. And I just was hoping you could tell us your thoughts behind it and where you'd like to see this go.
Sig came and talked to me about it, and Nome is such a diverse school, and I just wanted to show my support for my fellow youth and AAPI. And my generation definitely has been doing a lot of social justice, and I was really excited when Sig asked me if I wanted to help her with this. So, yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you. Were you able to connect?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm on
so we have an amendment.
Yes, so this amendment, and I
think the most pertinent ones. So the second whereas, so AAPI individuals have a rich history within the state of Alaska. The change would come towards the end, so have made invaluable contributions to our state and local communities through creativity. This would change the perseverance and instead of sharing of, implementation of cultural knowledge systems. You want to go whereas by whereas? Figure that might be easier.
Sure.
Any questions, concerns on that one?
I didn't follow you. Second whereas.
Would it be?
Actually, the third one, but go ahead. It's in the third one, actually. Wait, fourth one, you're right, it's in the fourth one. That's why you can't find it. I just happened to have it to that, and I was like, that's.
It did.
Never again.
What?
So nice.
How about Kirk?
Maybe cargo only.
Oh.
The cargo side, yeah.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Catch me and I can walk you. We have one in the hangar for the employees now. We moved both of them out there.
Yeah.
So we got lots of coffee being made. Yeah. Yeah, it was taking last place you can go, pretty much, get a free cup of coffee. It's
They
gone.
don't, not an outfitters anymore.
Do coffee?
Huh?
Coffee?
I'm sure they do.
So I think they get free coffee.
If any of you need a free cup of coffee, come to City Hall. We'll take care of you.
Yeah.
We have cream, actual, well, half and half, and sugar. And we occasionally have brown sugar, you know.
Coffee bit. I'll make a note in case somebody needs some.
Bank stop? Bank used to have coffee.
Wells Fargo?
Yeah.
That little station right between those two
Yeah.
offices. I remember that. I don't know. I haven't been there in a long
They
time.
don't.
Not during
They
COVID.
don't have it
Go
anymore?
in there anymore.
All right.
Okay, and one other.
Okay.
So in the now therefore it be resolved, it would be, especially in light of recent events and attacks against instead of on
I see.
AAPI individuals, communities.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion, objections, et cetera, to the amendment? Changing 3 words. Okay, roll call on the amendment, please.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. To the main motion, were there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Motion as amended carries.
Thank you. Item G.
R210404, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a 2021 Ford Expedition for the Nome Police Department.
Move to approve resolution 210404.
Second.
Discussion,
Um,
manager?
This is very similar to last year. This is more of an accounting process. We're hoping the vehicle should be delivered next year. We have to order the vehicle now to get it onto the last barge in September because Ford is that backed up on commercial vehicles like this that are governmental purchases. So we're buying off a governmental contract. And we have to give them notice now.
So this is an okay to expend part of next year's budget
Right.
on this vehicle.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Tapcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item H.
R210405, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a $171,049.82 grant from the Department of Health and Social Services to implement community-driven strategies that support COVID-19 related activities.
Move to approve resolution 210405.
Second.
Discussion?
This memorandum of agreement, we became aware about a month and a half ago of money that was being allocated to the various communities throughout throughout Alaska. But it was a very strange process where you had to go in and tell them what you were planning on spending the money on. A portion of it has to be on health equity, to make sure COVID-related services are getting down to the less fortunate, and to also provide some additional housing. So we are working with the community center and the hospital on this, and money will go to pay for all airport personnel necessary, or if we need to contract with airport personnel to continue our COVID-19 testing and controls or guidelines for entering the city of Nome. So
What did you say about housing?
housing would be helping to allow the community center to provide some housing for people who do not have housing in the community.
And
And I know this gets into a complicated issue, but that's what this grant is all about. I know there's probably going to be questions during my portion about all the money that seems to be coming available in the next year to 2 years.
we're not going to have any problem spending this money.
Well, we hope not. I mean, in terms of, if we don't spend it, it reverts back to the grantee, and then they will probably come up with another project. But we have met, Marguerite, Nikki, and I have met with this Department of Health and Social Services in regards to this. And they thought we put in a good application, and they were supportive of us. And if we had anything we needed to reallocate, they would be open to that so that we can spend out the money.
Question. So this is with, between the city and the state, right?
Right.
MOA?
Right.
And then how does the community center, you mentioned the community center, how does that?
They will have to spend the money. It's a reimbursable grant. This is not like the CARES money, which tranches were just given to us. We spend the money, we seek reimbursement, and then we are the pass-through agency.
So what you're saying is that part of this money will be passed through to community center?
Community center, but they have to,
Or all of the money? Or just-
no, 25,000.
Okay. And that's what's gonna go towards potential housing?
Yes.
I have a weird question that doesn't really have much to do with the resolution. Why are we getting the money instead of approving the MOA to process the money? Like we're doing a resolution accepting money instead of doing a resolution to enter into the MOA with the state. Is there a reason why it was written this way? I just thought that was kind of strange.
Brian showed it to me. It didn't click, so.
I wrote the resolution, it was late in the day.
I think it addresses both of them, actually, because it's basically the resolution says you're accepting the money and you're implementing the community-driven strategies, which is implementing the program, which is the MOA. So the wording is, even though
A little bit different. I was just curious.
Any further discussion? Call the question, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Doug Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yep.
Councilmember Martinson?
Yes.
Councilmember Reader?
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock? Motion carries.
Okay, utility managers report. And on to city managers report.
It's wet outside.
As you may know, that the issue of a fox, I don't think the word infestation is not the correct word, but a large number of fox visiting the community. The state worked with us, state wildlife officials, and we caught 35, or they caught 35 trapped foxes, and they were euthanized. A number of them, from what we're being told, though I haven't gotten the exact number, did have rabies. So we have conducted a clinic over a couple weekends for vaccination of household pets. We're looking at doing something on a Saturday in either late April or early May to encourage people to get their pets vaccinated, which they are required by city ordinance to be vaccinated and licensed. We have been, just so you know, we are anticipating getting in the neighborhood of about $1.7 million in American Recovery Plan money. This money will be over a 2-year cycle. This money is a little bit different from the CARES, and we're getting educated on what it can and cannot be spent on. There is a significant amount of money that the state is going to have that's going to be available for businesses. There is going to be money available for people who cannot pay their rent and utilities. And another plan there is about over $1 billion going to our Alaska Native tribes and business organizations. So there's going to be a lot of money coming into the state of Alaska, and hopefully we'll get ripple through the economy. So vaccinations, we are at 71%. We will have vaccinations again in here on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday nights. If they do not have enough people signed up, they are moved to another night because you can only open a vial and you don't want to open it up and give one shot out of the vial and throw it away. Speaking with the hospital, they are anticipating, Dr. Peterson is anticipating providing vaccinations at the airport for people coming in addition to the testing for those who choose not to be tested or cannot or are too young to be vaccinated. They are also going to be looking at having a vaccination clinic in the post office and possibly at one of the food stores. Right now, with the loosening of the restrictions in the airport, we are seeing 60% plus arriving vaccinated. And since I do not know everybody in the community, that seems to be a very good number because I do believe a lot of people are coming in from the outside. And I think that with the offer, the ability of getting the J&J, which is what they're going to probably be looking at the airport, that should help our vaccination rate. We are still somewhere down in the 50% for the region, I believe. And getting the region up to an 80%, 75, 80% we would be achieving herd immunity. Bering Street repaving, I attended a meeting last week. That project is moving forward, and we should be seeing paving if the prices come in right when they go out to bid. There was another number of contractors who were on the phone when we were listening in. And then you have a memo from Joy in regards to what her projects are. She is out right now. I don't think she's joined us, but she is out of the office right now.
Any questions of Glenn?
And I do need an executive session, please. I just want to remind everybody.
I have a question on our 1.7 million that's coming out of the latest, what's it called,
American Recovery Plan, or I've
Do
heard,
we have any indication of what that can be spent on yet?
we are being told that it can be spent on lost revenues, on certain type of personnel, on hiring extra personnel for a short-term basis. Before I go into any further, I want to make sure have all the accurate information on this, because it was very broad, the one meeting I attended.
So do you feel that we'll have that information as we talk about budgets and
Yes,
setting mill rates for property taxes? and
yes.
things like
it will be included. Some of this money will be included in the budget. It also could be used, possibly to fix heating and ventilation systems. But we're also hearing that there may be some other money coming down the pike, that we could compete for. Doesn't mean we would get it, but we would be competitive for those type of, systems, because just between this building and the rec center, we're talking $2.2 to $2.5 million. Because everybody's going to be out there at the same time wanting things fixed. And that's going to push the price up.
Any other questions for the city manager? Seeing none. We're at the second shot for citizens' comments. So again, 443-6605. If you have a comment, please dial that number. We'll wait a minute or so for anyone to call in. Anyone in the room have a comment?
You had your chance.
Cake, pizza, like, what more could you need?
I'm good now. I'm good.
that. There's a really healthy one here.
That's the vegan pizza.
All right. Go to council member comments.
Councilmember Brown?
I have no comments.
Councilmember Doug Johnson?
I have no comments.
Councilmember Mark Johnson?
Nothing today, thank you.
Councilmember Martinson? Councilmember Reader?
I would just like to thank Zoe and Megan for their work on the AAPI ordinance, or resolution, I'm sorry, and that was nice of you guys to consider that population. And I'm glad that some of the youth encouraged her to do that. That was even more heartwarming to hear, that she was encouraged to help get that through to us. I'm glad to see that our youth are actually starting to think through that process. That was really nice to hear. Which leads me to my next comment. I happened to be scrolling Facebook and saw that you were trying to get together a city government workshop to answer questions and help people possibly get through the process of running for city government. And I would just like to publicly announce it in case anybody's watching and are considering it. Get a hold of Megan so she can get your name on a list so that she can set up a date, time, and place to make that happen. I think that would be a very beneficial conversation to have for people who aren't quite sure what you're going to get into doing this job, because I think a lot of people stay away from it just because they don't know. And I think that would be really good information. And I was approached by a community member requesting that the city stop berming driveways in. And so I'd like to share that. I'm sure they're not the only person that has that problem. I know my husband, who is a snowplower in this community, was stuck in the middle of the road by our house. at 4 a.m. this morning. He left his car there and walked to work. So I'm sure the city really appreciated his having his car in the middle of the road. But you know what?
Since I don't know where he is,
Just gonna say, there's a lot of snow out there, folks, so I don't know what we can do about this. We've had this discussion on numerous occasions, and I'm not sure how we used to manage to not berm in our citizens, and now we do manage to berm in our citizens. Not sure, I know I was approached by another community member who indicates that our city snow removal crew needs some training in the operation of the equipment. I'm not sure where any of that has gone. I know he's had numerous conversations with more than one city council member, he assured me, and the city manager. And I'm not sure what else we need to do to make something happen.
well, that same individual also went up and told the snowblowers they were doing a great job in this community.
They are doing the best that they can with the, what they know.
It's not a person.
It's not a person,
personality thing,
it's not a personality thing.
Well,
It's making sure that who we have operating our equipment knows what they're doing to make it.
Well, I will leave it to this. They were very critical of the individuals to me. And, we do have a new driver that does need some additional training. There's no doubt about that. I have not had an opportunity to speak to one driver which is praised around here that's no longer with the city. And I plan on having an understanding of why we are doing things that in one section of our community, which is, and I was up there this morning. I went up there and looked at it and, made sure we had a driver to go back in through there and clean up. That one particular plow or bulldozer goes through and cleans up a lot of sections of town, and we may have to look at how we're distributing our personnel. But I do know that this community is getting a lot of oil right now, just so you know, and a lot of attention. And just so, the state plows me into, and, I dig myself out. I mean, they plow to the center of the road, so the plow, but I still come home or get in the morning and have snow in front of my vehicle, which I do have to shovel out. And yesterday I was out 3 times shoveling, or 2 times yesterday, and when I went out this morning, it didn't even look like I had shoveled. So, I understand it, and we've also been hit by 3 major storms in the last 2 weeks. I understand people are frustrated, because we would probably say, 2 or 3 members of the staff in this building couldn't get in today because they were snowed in. And that's just about half the staff in the building. And they were either snowed in on state roads, or they got snowed in on, where the city had plowed, or the state had plowed. I just don't know what the answer is. I know that, I just want to make sure, we had all the contracts in place, even though some people didn't sign their contracts, which we're still chasing down, and I followed that up with one council member. We tried to hire extra drivers. I think we only got 2 extra drivers this year. We had in place agreements with all of the major companies that had trucks available to us, whether they be wet or dry. And, and what was happening with some of the companies, because they had private contracts with other organizations, they went out and plowed that first, and then came and plowed us or assisted our staff. It's either they go to the major organizations or with the state. And, we're down on the, I'm just trying to be honest and straightforward with everybody. Do I think we can do better? I always think we can do better. So I don't want anybody to think that we're not taking these I don't want to call them criticism, but suggestions seriously, because we are.
Anything else?
Councilmember Tapioca.
Yeah, just a quick couple short announcements. Just echoing, appreciate Councilmember Reader mentioning about the workshop. So if anybody's interested, which I hope is everybody listening, hint, hint, that if you want to run for city council, I'm hoping to get a group of folks together and just talk about informally. We could do it formally too. I mean, when I ran for city council here, I had done a workshop in June with the League of Women Voters where they had a nice little packet. There's like, here's what it entails, here's the ordinances, here's your responsibilities, this is what your role is, here's how you campaign and do finance, which is not really relevant to Nome because we're a small community. But I would love to do that with some folks in town and get more people involved. I think, this is a really great way to shape our community and to make our community better and to give back. So I would love to talk with anybody who's interested, whether it's through the workshop individually, even if you're not thinking about running, you just want to know what city council does. Happy to talk about that too. In connection with that, the Alaska Municipal League and Alaska Conference, ACOM, Conference on Mayors, is doing a conference. It's KOYA, Conference of Young Alaskans. They're going to be selecting 55, 16 to 25-year-olds. I think the 55 has to do with the constitutional, the delegation, constitutional convention, there we go, and the number, because we have 55 delegates. And it'll take place August 1 through 4 in Fairbanks. They're really wanting to get young people involved in city governance. There is an application. You can get that through the Alaska Municipal League or reach out to me. I'm hoping to help out, and let Nils know that I'm planning to help out. Again, I think this is so important to get our youth up into these positions. So if you're interested in city council, city governance, this is, I think, a great conference to be at. And happy to help people with their applications or do whatever I can to support others in doing this work so that I can someday not do it. That is all. Koyana.
Cool.
Youth Representative Okalisik. Mr. Acting Mayor.
Yeah, did Mayor leave any comments? No. Okay.
I thought he was going to be here tonight when I last talked with him.
Okay, we have an executive session. The topic is a discussion on contract negotiations, the immediate knowledge of which may adversely impact city finances. Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We are in executive session. Or we will be as soon as we get secured.
Mr. Chair, will Youth Representative Okalisik be involved in this?
If she wishes to.
We have to get her to call back in on another line because I'm going to end the Zoom.
Okay.
Should she be involved in this?
She just hung up.
That might go.
Oh, yeah, she texted me asking if she should stay for a sec.
I mean, tell her she doesn't need to.